Turning up our flag, playing shitty country music. They forgot about the hag. Well, don't you think it's time we all got downright mad? Let's take our country back. Well, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. And that's just what'll happen if you rob me to get a fix. No, I ain't messing around. I got no problem putting shitheads down. Let's take our country back.
Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. This week's specials are incredible. Standing rib roast, $10.99 a pound. You save $9 a pound. Bone-in spiral slice ham, $3.49 a pound. These are on sale until the 24th while supplies last. I already grabbed mine, so hurry down to Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. Everything you need and more. Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. Joining me is veteran political analyst, businessman. You can find him on most conservative media outlets. One of the most knowledgeable commentators of our time, Mr. Ford O'Connell. You can find him at FordO'Connell.com and X, formerly Twitter. I am Smokin Joe, and welcome to Cracker Culture. Ford, it's good to see you as always. The first thing I want to do is play a clip of what some are saying about Colorado taking Donald Trump off the ballot. Then I want you to help us regular folks understand this bastardization of the 14th Amendment. So let me play the first clip.
The 14th Amendment and former President Trump's actions during January 6th, that he is not allowed to be on the ballot in Colorado. Just receiving word from the Trump campaign, a reaction to this ruling. Quote, unsurprisingly, the all-Democrat appointed Colorado Supreme Court has ruled against President Trump, supporting a Soros-funded left-wing group's scheme to interfere in an election on behalf of crooked Joe Biden by removing President Trump's name from the ballot and eliminating the rights of Colorado voters to vote for the candidate of their choice.
I do not believe Donald Trump should be prevented from being president of the United States by any court. I think he should be prevented from being president of the United States by the voters.
We don't need to have judges making these decisions. We need voters to make these decisions.
There was no trial on any of this. They basically just said, what, you can't be on the ballot? I mean, how does that work? What's the limiting principle for that?
This is a hollowed out husk of what the country was built on. The basic principle that we, the people, select our leadership.
We think this is an absurd ruling, and we're going to do whatever we can to protect the rights of voters in Colorado and frankly across the nation to choose Donald Trump if they so choose.
I'm critical of the opinion out of the Colorado Supreme Court. I don't think that's following the Constitution. I think that's stretching the bounds of the 14th Amendment unconstitutionally.
Could we just say that Biden can't be on the ballot because he let in 8 million illegals into the country and violated the Constitution?
I pledge to withdraw from the Colorado GOP primary ballot unless and until Trump's name is restored. And I demand that Ron DeSantis and Chris Christie and Nikki Haley do the same thing.
Well, now I'm familiar with Vivek's campaign manager, and I did send him a message to give me a call. I'd like to get Vivek's input on this. And so when that call comes in, I'll make sure I let everybody know. Ford, what do you think about this craziness in Colorado?
Well, the all-Democratic Colorado Supreme Court got it dead wrong on the history and the interpretation of the 14th Amendment, particularly Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. Look, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what's going on. Was Donald Trump ever charged or convicted of an insurrection? No. Does the 14th Amendment Section 3 apply to the office of the presidency? That's never actually been ruled upon. It appears that it doesn't. But the other thing is this entire insurrection clause was rendered dormant in 1872 by another law that was put into place. So here's what happened. In short, the Colorado Supreme Court decided to shred the Constitution because they think that voters are incapable of deciding for themselves who the next president of the United States is. I'd love to say that this was an anomaly. but this is exactly how Democrats think when it comes to Trump. It's okay to shred the Constitution. In other words, if you were going to actually be out there having a fire safety campaign, what the Colorado Supreme Court just said is, we got to burn that house down in the name of fire safety. I mean, that's how bad the Democrats are. They call themselves the protectors of democracy, and yet they're the ones that want to end our constitutional republic.
Well, a lot of people have concerns that other blue states are going to follow suit. Do you think that we're going to see more and more of them try to take Trump off the ballot?
Absolutely. There's talks already going on in the state of Maine, the state of California. But there's something very interesting that Ron DeSantis actually said in the clip that you played. This now becomes, because there's no real limiting principle on it, this now becomes open season to have a political tit for tat. You could have red states essentially try to use the same little gambit to knock Joe Biden off the ballot. At the end of the day, this whole thing is ridiculous, but this is what Democrats believe. They will do anything to get Trump. Hopefully the Supreme Court will weigh in soon, but I do believe if the Supreme Court does rule on this, they're going to overturn it.
And by the time it gets to the Supreme Court, since he's appealed it, it would probably be too late. He would probably already be elected, would you not think? Or
no, I think that, I don't think it's going to be an issue with the primary, because here's something that the Colorado Republican Party said, and I have to give them a hat tip for this. They basically said, if you're going to start controlling the ballot, then we're going to run a caucus. And if we run a caucus, then you don't have to worry about the ballot situation. So they're taking the bull by the horns. I think the concern here is that Democrats are going to try to use this Colorado ruling to knock Trump off the general election ballot. And I think that's what concerns everyone. And before we have a general election, I do believe that the Supreme Court will rule. They'll have to rule, because if Colorado can get away with this unchecked, California will try it, Maine will try it, you name it.
Well, yeah, like I said, I hope that Trump's successful. I think it's just a horrible the way that the left is trying to control this election. I want to talk to you about Governor Abbot of Texas. He signed into law to allow Texas to defend our open borders. Now, here's what he said. Let me show you the clip.
4 years ago, the United States had the fewest illegal border crossings in about 40 years. It was because of 4 policies put in place by the Trump administration: in catch and release, Title 42, remain in Mexico, and building a border wall. That is what led to such a low number of people crossing illegally. Now, under President Biden, he has eliminated all of those policies and has done nothing to halt illegal immigration. Joe Biden's deliberate inaction has decimated America. 2 years ago, there was an all-time record number of illegal immigrants apprehended, more than 2.3 million. That's larger than the size of Houston, Texas. Then this last year, there was more than 2.4 million people apprehended crossing the border illegally, again larger than the size of Houston, Texas. While Donald Trump was president, there were 11 people on the terrorist watch list who were apprehended. Under Joe Biden, however, that number has skyrocketed to 294 people on the terrorist watch list who've been apprehended. That's a 2,600% increase under Joe Biden. And it counts only those who are known to have been apprehended, who were known to be on the terrorist watch list. It does not include the people who were not apprehended, who were on the terrorist watch list, who paid more money to make sure that they were not caught. Last year, there were more than 24,000 people come across the border illegally from China. Border between the United States and Mexico is the deadliest land crossing in the entire world. Biden's deliberate inaction has left Texas to fend for itself. The authors of the United States Constitution foresaw a situation when the federal government would be inattentive to states that faced challenges at their borders. And in response, they inserted Article 1, Section 10 to the United States Constitution to empower states to take action to defend themselves. And that is exactly what Texas is doing.
Well, Ford, what do you think about what Governor Abbott said?
He's absolutely right. Let's understand this. The Biden administration, contrary to what the mainstream media says, did not inherit a border crisis. They created a border crisis, and they can easily use executive action to kill 70% of this problem. Do you realize right now in the month of December, there are 10,000 illegal aliens a day or more crossing every single day into this country? And what does the Biden administration want to do? They don't want to detain anyone. They don't want to deport anyone. They just want to release them into the country. And let me tell you something. When you release illegal aliens into the country, they have less than a 6% chance of ever being deported. What has happened is, under Joe Biden, we have de facto no borders and de facto amnesty. And what Greg Abbott is basically saying is, if you're not going to uphold the laws on the books of the United States, the state of Texas is going to make illegal immigration a state crime, and we're going to do your job if you're not going to do it for us. Because remember, at the end of the day, border security is not about illegal immigrants as much as it's about national security. And what Greg Abbott is basically saying is, you've abdicated your job. It is now time for us to do it. And you know what's going to happen, Joe? That the Biden administration is going to say this is inhumane and cruel. And Texas has already been sued for doing what every other state should step up and do, and say, if the federal government is going to do it, we're going to do it for us, because this is destroying our country.
Well, now I looked at some of the 4 laws he signed into place, and the one of them that I think people need to really think about, if you are helping or harboring any of these illegal immigrants as you're coming across, is severe penalties. I think he's talking like 20 years.
Well, I'm not sure that Texas has completely worked out the mechanics. I do believe they've got the right idea, to your point. But really, what they really want to get is what they call multiple crossers. So the first time in Texas, just off the top of my head, it's like, okay, if we find out you're illegal and it's your first crossing, we're going to put you in jail or have you pay a fine and then deport you. If we find out that you've crossed multiple times and we have you on the books, then it becomes 20 years in jail. And then when it comes to some people harboring them, you're absolutely right. But that's kind of the point here, is that they have to make sure that everyone has skin in this game. Now, will it be 20 years under their law? I don't know. I know that what they've written in the law, but I have a feeling that Texas is still fine-tuning that law.
All right. Well, like I said, they pushed the death penalty harder than any other states. So who knows what's going to happen in Texas?
Well, I just can't believe that, frankly, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. Look, if you're a governor in your state, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, the bottom line is you should be concerned about the welfare of your state residents and your constituents. And unfortunately, a lot of other governors, including some Republican governors, are turning a blind eye to Biden's border invasion.
Yeah, that's the absolute truth right there. I want to move on into New Hampshire. Nikki Haley's poll numbers have increased, and the media is going crazy. I have the numbers here. Let me play them for you.
According to a new St. Anselm College survey, Haley has doubled her support in the Granite State. The former UN ambassador now sits at 30% support, up from 15% in September. Former President Donald Trump remains the front-runner in the new poll, still at 44% support of Republicans' likely New Hampshire primary voters. Trailing Trump and Haley, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie is at 12%, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis at 6%, tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy with 5%, and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson has 0%. The remaining respondents, 3%, unsure of who they will support in the January 23rd primary.
Well, look, I mean, even though her poll numbers are up, I just don't see her standing a chance. I mean, and look, I played that clip early. Out of all of them, if I was Trump, out of the pool that we've seen that's been debating, I have to give it to that kid Vivek. I mean, he's really been the only one that's kind of just said, hey, I'm sticking up for the Constitution, and I want Trump on the ballot.
Well, look, if Donald Trump becomes the 47th president of the United States, you can bet that Vivek Ramaswamy will somehow be in the administration. Do I think he'll be the vice president? No, I don't, but I do think he will be in the administration. He'll be a key player in a Trump administration. That said, with Nikki Haley, the media is rooting for anybody but Trump in the Republican primary. And look, for Nikki Haley to really have any chance at the nomination, she'd almost have to pull off a triple sow cow. She'd have to come in second in Iowa, outdoing Ron DeSantis. Then she'd actually have to win New Hampshire to even have a chance. I don't think she's going to do it, but what she is doing is she is playing herself into being a power broker once Trump is the nominee. And trust me, a lot of conservatives are not thrilled with Chinese Communist Party Nikki Haley. So we're going to find out how that plays out, but there's no question right now in New Hampshire is her best shot of actually winning a primary against Donald Trump, even over South Carolina.
Well, now, Biden's claiming the media is looking at the wrong polls. Here's a little short clip of Biden making this claim.
Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?
They want me to run.
2/3 say they
Read
don't.
the polls. Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same.
Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same.
Well, and that's what's happened here is you've got a majority of Democrats who don't want him to be the Democratic nominee. And then on top of it, you've also got Donald Trump running circles around him, not only in the battleground states that are going to decide this election, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, etc. You've got Joe Biden getting mad, and it's not just some of the polls he's losing in. He's losing in all of the polls. And that's why, every time Joe Biden's losing in the polls, he's losing because what does he try to do? Two things. He tries to call Donald Trump a dictator or Hitler, and then you've got his minions knocking Donald Trump off of ballots. So when Donald Trump's getting knocked off of ballots, there's one reason why. Because he's beating Joe Biden. And that's really all you got to know. If you turn on the TV and you hear over and over on the TV, Donald Trump's a dictator, Donald Trump's a Nazi, Donald Trump is Hitler, then Donald Trump is winning.
I think he's winning, barring some legal action that they finagle around. I just don't see him not becoming the 47th president.
Well, he got some good news. He got some good news recently because Jack Smith, who's basically trying to railroad him in the District of Columbia on an election interference case, the Supreme Court just said, no go. We're not listening to the presidential immunity, so it's got to go back down there. And what that means is Donald Trump will probably likely be able to run out the clock before the election on them being able to try him on those 4 federal cases. And if that happens, that if Donald Trump wins, they're not going to be able to try him. And if he loses, they're not going to care about trying him. But this is who the Democrats are at the national level. Sadly, these are people that will destroy the Constitution in the name of claiming to protect it when really at the end of the day, they don't care one fig about the Constitution.
Well, I hadn't talked to you about this, but I did briefly watch the Hunter Biden deal. And it seems to me like that the Democrats is pushing every which way they can to just give him a slap on the wrist and exclude any dealings with Biden. But, you'd have to be crazy to not see the numbers coming in for the checks and things that have went to Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's it. Look, that's absolutely right. When you look at what's happening to Donald Trump with the ballots, with Jack Smith, the federal prosecutor, and you see how Hunter Biden's being dealt with, that's when you see the 2 tiers of justice in this country. And that is what irritates a lot of people, not whether you were right or left, but how could it be so different, the application of justice? But remember, when it comes to the checks and Hunter Biden, the Hunter Biden saga is really a Joe Biden crisis, because at the end of the day, what is being alleged here is that Joe Biden took money while in office from foreign countries and foreign companies in places like China, Ukraine, Romania, Russia, in exchange for political favors. Now, Joe, you and I both know that when you take money while in office from foreign entities, That is what is known as public corruption. I don't know how much more people really need to see, but I'm glad that they've actually launched this impeachment inquiry, because people need to know how corrupt the Biden family really is.
Well, I ain't never seen a more corrupt administration in my entire life.
Well, you've got different types of corruption within that administration. You've got Alejandro Mayorkas, who doesn't want to uphold border law. You've got Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation. I'm still trying to figure out what he does. And then you have cackling Kamala Harris, that to this day is probably the worst vice president in American history.
Well, Ford, it's about that time. We're getting close to it. You know, everybody waits for this. Today's episode of
The Man's Trash.
Now, today in The Man's Trash is pretty much covering the entire state. Many Florida politicians are resigning over Form 6 because they will have to show all of their financials, anything over $1,000. I'm going to play a little clip from Collier County, and then I want to ask you, in my opinion, what are they trying to hide? Or is this the audit we've been begging for? Is the governor, this is a way for them to get this audit we've been asking for? It seems pretty fishy, but let me play this right here.
That it makes is not what I signed up for.
Half of the Naples City Council is threatening to resign instead of disclosing their financial information. Last night, Naples Vice Mayor Michael McCabe announced he's going to resign at the end of the year. Council members Beth Petronoff and Paul Perry also told us they are considering resigning over Form 6. This form requires local elected officials to disclose financial assets worth more than $1,000.
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Nobody inside City Council chambers Monday expected this 20-minute resignation speech from Vice Mayor Michael McCabe.
This has forced me to a point that I never imagined, but must do. I will be tendering my resignation from the Naples City Council effective December 31st.
McCabe's comments came after City Council hosted an emergency section of their meeting yesterday to discuss the seat that Councilwoman Beth Petronoff would leave open if she decides to quit. She says Senate Bill 774, better known as Form 6, is making her consider resignation.
This is the most egregious assault on privacy. It's an assault on one's rights. It's an assault on the Second Amendment rights. And it's an unacceptable government intrusion.
The form, which has been utilized at the county and state level for nearly 60 years, would also become a requirement for local officials starting in 2024. They'll have to list their assets, income, liabilities, and business dealings. Anything above $1,000.
I want you to make a list of your assets and your liabilities, and I want you to come up with what your net worth is. And then I want you to go out and post that on a public forum for any and all.
McCabe says he would rather go into retirement than...
You got it right there. McCabe says he'd rather go in retirement, and I thought he was considering running for mayor at one point.
Well, I've actually had to fill out Form 6. I mean, what is it that he's so worried about? I mean, this form has been around for 60 years. You run for state house, you run for state senate, you run for governor. You got to do this. What did these local guys think they were going to get away with this? And thank God, you're right. It is about transparency. Are you really going to get all your net worth? Like you said, no. But believe it or not, there are a set of lawyers and accountants who do nothing but Form 6 across the state for people that want to run for office. Why shouldn't they be held as the same standard as everybody else in the state?
Now, I agree with you. Now, my only issue that I have is it doesn't apply for elected school board members or county managers. I feel like it should apply to all elected officials. If you're going to pick on one, get them all.
That's exactly right. It should apply to everyone. Do I think there should be maybe some changes to Form 6? Having done it myself, yes, I do think there should be some changes. But the idea is it should be transparency. You want to become a public servant. You want to become a public official. Guess what? You're going to have to jump through some hoops, and there needs to be some transparency. And it needs to your point, Joe, to cover everyone.
Well, as I talked about the school board, I want to say there's been another child that was beaten, in which some say is a hate crime at Harms Marsh Middle School. Let me add another uncontrolled act of violence in Armor Persons District. Of course, the school board found no evidence that it was a hate crime. And of course, the school board found no evidence of throwing away all the Holocaust books they threw away. I've got a small video here I want to play.
What's going on with the schools? It's terrible.
A 14-year-old girl is recovering tonight after her family says she was punched and beaten by bullies in a Harns Marsh Middle School bathroom. We have video of the fight, and it is hard to watch.
As you saw in the video, the way that she was doing it, it broke her phone. And so she couldn't call mom, she couldn't call security, she couldn't call anybody.
If you think this is hard to watch, imagine being the grandparent of the 14-year-old 8th grader with autism, who you see taking the brunt of the beating.
We were already contemplating getting her out of that school, putting her somewhere else, but there was no openings.
Sally Fuster and Charles Nolan said since this fight inside a bathroom at Harns Marsh Middle on December 11th, their daughter, the mother of the student, hasn't slept. This police report shows their granddaughter says for the last year she was bullied by another middle school student. It goes on to say the other student claims it was their granddaughter who decided to meet in the bathroom.
Why do we always have to wait for a tragedy to occur and for somebody to die and somebody to go to jail for manslaughter in order to do something about it? Why can't we do prevention?
The school district told us in a statement, our investigation determined the students involved had an ongoing disagreement and met as planned. The entire incident was recorded and there is no mention of race or religion. But they tell me their granddaughter was attacked and it could have been worse.
This county needs some help. We need some help. We need the governor to send some help, you know, because our kids are our future.
Now, look, I agree with that lady. I've been begging for the governor to get off his rumpus and come to Lee County for 3 years. I mean, somebody needs to step in. Armor Persons is incompetent. He cannot run that district. And I mean, that's a tough district, but they surely don't need somebody like an aging Armor Persons with no, his only desire is the next big dinner gala they can go to. It's not about the children.
No, and it needs to be about the children. And to your point, Armor is in a very difficult district when it comes to these types of situations, but you have to know that and you have to plan. And therefore, when it comes to District 5, you need to be putting the resources in there. And if, they're not going to do it, then, the governor needs to try to help find a solution to this because this is completely unacceptable.
Well, like I said, the girl was half Jewish and half black, according to the reporter, and the grandparents were definitely white, so the mother's probably white. My thing is it's only a hate crime if it's against somebody of a different race.
Yeah, and I think that there's a larger point to that. Let's step outside of Lee County for a second, Joe. And when you look at the FBI hate crime statistics in this country, more than 60% of the hate crimes in America are anti-Semitic hate crimes. That means the Jews are attacked more than any other group in the entire country combined. And I think that people need to wake up to the very real anti-Semitism that goes on in this country. It's not just in Europe. It's not just in the Middle East. It's taking place here in America, and it's also taking place right here in Florida and in Southwest Florida.
Well, I want to go ahead and talk about Cape Coral. Now, I attended the Cape Coral City Council meeting the other night, and the Cape Coral City Council awards themselves a stipend that over doubles their salary at the taxpayers' expense without the taxpayers having any say. The city also chose to appoint Richard Carr, a Democrat, to replace Patty Cummings' seat. Now, I got a lot more to say about this. I spoke against the shady pay raise. I also spoke against the board trying to appoint Jennifer Nelson. Some took great issues with me opposing Nelson to the point of sending me veiled threats, consequences if I continue to expose her liberal ideology. Now, I'm going to play you what happened when I spoke at the council meeting. They arrested a man, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. And they also tried to stop public comment when I got up to speak. So I'll play that for you.
Motion. Do we have a second to the motion on the floor? I do not hear a second. Motion fails. Motion fails.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead, sir. Make sure I get my 3 minutes here after all this. I'm here to speak in favor of Robert Sutter to fill the vacant council seat in District 4. Most of you are not familiar with Mr. Sutter, and with the current lack of faith in this board, that's a good thing. Mr. Sutter has far proven to be more of a public servant than anyone on this board. As an Army 4th-grade officer with 35 years of management experience with a master's degree places him to be more qualified leader than any of you. We deserve a voice who is not beholden to political strategists and vendors and who show support and favors for their friends and associates. This is the Purple Heart City. To neglect to place a disabled veteran, proven hero in this board should make you hang all your heads in shame. None of you has ever served for government other than this public puppet mill. The voters have spoken. They have already rejected the Wilted Rose from Texas. Bob Sutter should be the council member or leave it vacant. Secondly, I would like to address your referendum to award yourselves a stipend, or to be honest, an increase of salary of $5,000 per month to the mayor. That's $5,000 per month to Mayor Gunter, which equates to $60,000, $3,330 per board member. That equates to $39,600 on top of the salary we already provide you. The stipend is nothing other than an unethical way to almost increase your salary to double. And if you want it reactive to October 1st, we're going to demand receipts for all the use of this so we can call stipend from October 1st that you're going to spend your money on. The city manager, whose salary is one of the highest paid in the state. Why? It's certainly not because of his credentials. I'm sure his father, being top dog in the union, played no part in his exuberant salary. I have submitted one of many public records requests. While I believe I wouldn't invest money, my sister Paige Roush, which many of you know, is decided to pay for any records request that I fill out. I have a small group of people for the community who have supported everything I've said. Would you please rise?
These are people that are supporting what Joe is doing. Woo!
Looks to me like your constituency agrees with me and are tired of your corruptness. Myself, my team, and the citizens of Cape-Coral are going to demand accountability for your shameful actions. I'm Smokin Joe. And remember, when you lie and when you deny, I'm going to put the proof right in your eye. Thank you.
Before, look, over 3/4 of the room stood up for me. The only people that didn't stand up behind me was, of course, the Wilted Rose of Texas, Jennifer Nelson supporters. And, it was pretty plain to see they didn't care what the general public said. They had made up their mind. They pushed this in so that there was nobody had any public input on it. It was already a done deal by the time I got there.
Yeah, I mean, look, we discussed what was going to happen here with the election, but I think you pointing out the stipend and the city council and the mayor basically doubling their salaries, I mean, that should be one of the biggest stories in Lee County, is the fact that you've got a city council that turns around and votes to give itself a pay raise. Wouldn't it be great if you and I could just get together and vote ourselves a pay raise? I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable. And nobody seems to know that it actually happened. I mean, I'll be honest. good for you for going there. Good for you for pointing this out. I'll tell you, though, that meeting was looking a lot like a Jerry Springer episode.
More than you know. I mean, they arrested one gentleman, John Gunter, having Scott Kemp, another man, removed, making a motion to not allow public comment when I approach the podium and things. And I've got a picture, I think, here of this man. This is Mr. Kemp as they was arresting him. And so I followed up on that a bit. He's standing up for them not to destroy J.C. Park and Cape Coral. And while some people might not understand why it's so important to Mr. Kemp, I looked into it. Mr. Kemp has a memorial bench inside J.C. Park dedicated to his deceased wife. And this is a place where he goes to talk or pray or whatever and communicate with his wife. I would probably be much more adamant than he was. What the man done in the first meeting is he went back to his seat, got on his knees, and turned his back on the council because he felt like they had turned their back on him. They had him removed. Then when he come back and he had proof that he had already, talked to an attorney, he's got a right. They refused to let him speak. They took him out in handcuffs. And it's just sad. I mean, the way that they were, and the crowd was calling them brown shirts and things like that. It was, Jerry Springer hasn't been that good in probably 20 years. I mean, if every council meeting was like that, that would be my new entertainment.
I mean, well, that's unbelievable, though. It's important that you actually tell people why he was there and why he got arrested, because it's not like the mainstream media is going to cover it. And I mean, I didn't even know his wife had a bench there, in there. I mean, that's a really touching point. You could see why he would get so worked up. But I mean, the city council, you start to wonder if they're actually working on the behalf of the constituents of Cape Coral, particularly after giving themselves a pay raise and really not seeming to solve any problems.
Well, there was an article in a local news press that an attorney said that they did feel like that they were violating Mr. Kemp's constitutional rights. He didn't do no outburst. It wasn't nothing like that. He just turned his back on them in protest. I don't see no reason to ban a man from coming to a meeting for turning his back on a council who has done more than turn their back on the people of Cape Coral. They've turned their back and crapped on everybody in Cape Coral. That's what they've done.
And turning your back on the government is a form of First Amendment free expression. So, look, I hope that there's nothing bad that comes down on him for this. But, I mean, it shows you sort of the authoritarian ways in which the Cape Coral City Council works.
Well, as I understand it, Mr. Kemp's first appearance will be, I think, January 2nd. If I'm available, I plan on attending that court hearing, and I hope to talk to Mr. Kemp personally. I would like to interview him so the public gets a feeling of why this man feels so jaded toward this corrupt government that we have in Cape Coral.
No, and why don't we, given that it's dedicated to his deceased wife, this bench, isn't there another way that you could remove the bench, put it somewhere else if that's what's going to happen with the park? I mean, there's got to be a way to make, Mr. Kemp whole on this, because I think that this is a very important story that you brought up.
Well, as I was telling you before, some people took great issue with me opposing Nelson. When I left the meeting, I was at the elevator by myself. And I hesitate to even say about this, but I'm going to tell it because, first off, I don't live in fear of no damn body. I fear God and my wife and not another soul. When I got to the elevator, I was approached, and here come Jennifer Nelson and her her significant other and Javier Lassiter and Missy Lassiter. And I guess Jennifer's significant other is Javier's brother-in-law. Well, Missy started, barking at me. You thought the cake was baked for Jennifer, but the cake was baked for the Democrat. Well, no, the truth was they got fooled. And I have a little issue with Mr. Carr getting that seat. He is a Democrat, and he had a small term that he worked for the FBI. He's worked in law enforcement. I spoke with Commissioner Pendergrass, and he'd worked for Cecil for a while. But that vote, they didn't expect that vote to go that way. And not a soul voted for Bob Sutter, who was by far the most well-spoken and most well-deserving of that seat at all. So as she's yelling at me at the elevator, I just stopped her. I said, back off. And I wanted to say exactly what I said. Maybe I hurt her feelings. I said, I don't know if you've seen my wife, but I don't discuss things with ugly women. You can take the next elevator. I said it to her right in front of her husband and everybody else. They didn't take issue until they got online calling me a keyboard warrior and things like that. Making Bell threats to me just makes me want to just destroy you even worse. And I understand that Missy's a bully. I understand that this is the way a lot of people in politics do, is they use bully tactics to try to intimidate people. I'm not intimidatable. I'm sorry, whatever she thinks she's going to accomplish. Then they decided, and it's supposedly it's her husband that come on my Facebook and made a lot of comments and Bell threats that if I kept going down the road that I was going, there would be consequences. Well, that's an open-ended threat, in my opinion. Well, what consequences? Is Missy going to use her job working for the sheriff to try to harass me? I hope so, because that would be another lawsuit. I've spoken with my attorney this morning, and he told me to keep on keeping on, and that's what I plan on doing. And they continued on. They couldn't help themselves, and they told me all the things I was wrong about and how I manufactured lies and just roused people up. And I'm going to tell you, everything I've said was the truth. And everything I said about Jennifer Nelson was the truth. And just a little short clip here. This proves everything I said. I've got all the proof. And Ford, you know me. I don't speak out of turn without the proof. But you can just look for yourself right here. Now, this is him saying my wife and I didn't agree with me. And he states in there that I ran away like a coward and didn't want to argue with his wife. I don't argue with women. That's his job. Everything I've said about her demanding to pay school, which is not, and then I said about her being part of the gay pride. Well, no, she this and that. She wasn't. Look, this is what Jennifer Nelson and Mayor Gunter promoted, and I paid for our tax dollars. Who do we see? We see Jennifer Nelson. And in the best one yet, they put sexual implements on animals for this parade. And right there, what she say? Grateful to my pride tribe. Now, if I told any damn lie, she posted it.
You brought the receipts, Joe. What else are you going to say? When you bring the receipts, that's the point. And every now and then, you may get something wrong. I may get something wrong, but at least we try to bring the receipts where we can. And in this case, it appears you brought the receipts, my friend.
Well, I've got plenty more just out of the not boring the people with all the different stuff that I have. Look, I have a crack research team, and what they don't realize, when you're in a position like they're in, everything you put out, I got somebody screenshotting everything you say, so I'll make sure I've got that receipt. Whether I like you or not, I'm going to make sure I've got it when you come after me. They made claims that I had been a number of things from someone who is just trying to destroy the Republican Party. Look, I've been a conservative all my life. I don't like the bad players in either party. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, no party affiliation. If you're doing damage to the state of Florida, I'm going to hold you accountable, like it or not.
I think that's the best way you can go. And it's all about, Southwest Florida and the state of Florida. The other thing is making sure that people realize corruption is corruption. I don't care if it's got an R next to it or a D next to it. That is not good for our state, our region, and certainly not our country.
Well, and the thing about it is, I don't think they realize is by them attacking me, they're building our following because of the people that know me in this area. I've been here most of my life. I mean, I've lived in Henry County, I've lived in Collier County, but mainly in Lee County. The people who knows me knows I'm not going to come out with something that I can't prove. And she went as far as to claim that I had no right to speak at the Cape Coral Council meeting because I was not a resident of Cape Coral. Now, first off, I have always said I'm an advocate for children and I'm an advocate for Florida. I speak in Collier County, I speak in Henry County, I speak in Lee County. I speak all over the place. This is the first time that anybody's ever made a statement that I didn't have a right to my constitutional right of free speech.
And look, that's exactly what it's about. I mean, people don't cover a lot of the local government stuff and the local officials. And, at least you're out there doing it and you're driving up and down. You call me on the phone. You tell me where you're going here, there, Lee County, Collier County, Henry County, etc. Look, people need to know because a lot of times people are just casting, votes because there's an R or a D there, or in some cases, non-affiliation. We know about that, but people really need to know who's represented at the local level because the local officials, Joe, are the ones who have the biggest impact on their daily lives. I mean, I love Donald Trump as much as anybody, but at the same time, he does not have the biggest impact on my day-to-day life in the way that some of our county commissioners, school board, et cetera, do. And people need to understand that and talk about destroy the Republican Party. Who wants to destroy the Republican Party? Southwest Florida is a red place. We just want to make sure that you get, the people that you vote in there are who they say they are.
Well, Jennifer Nelson got one vote by the only admitted Democrat on the board, which was Cosden, which sparked her lover's in-laws to take issue with me laying out the facts about Nelson. Everything I stated, I have the proof to back it up. Missy Laster and her spouse have tried to discredit me, which honestly, like I told you, has made my support grow stronger. I will not be bullied by rhinos or fake Republicans. I'm never going to back down from exposing the truth and the bad players in politics on either side. And I want to make it clear. I didn't pick a fight with Missy Laster. She kept y'all around about rabbit holes and there'd be consequences and all this. Missy started this fight and she found the wrong one because there ain't no rabbit hole over here. This is a damn bullpen. And if she wants to take it that way, I've got a lot more evidence that out of my own ethics, I have held back. But I promise you, if they keep coming after me, I am going to expose stuff that they have no clue I have knowledge of, and they can all kiss my red behind.
Well, I will say this. I do know one thing about you. You do bring the receipts, you do have the research, and you're definitely on a mission to make Southwest Florida, and particularly Lee County, a better place. So I tip my hat to you. I know there's always some tit for tat and this, that, and the other, and people get heated. But at the end of the day, you were very consistent. Hey, a lot of times I take my hat off to you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it. And like I said, I don't understand the fact why her husband would even encourage me standing outside the corridors of City Hall and arguing with his wife. I mean, what kind of man argues with a woman? Me and my wife, we don't have that problem. If him and her like to argue and bitch back and forth with each other, that's their issue. I'm not taking up the mantle to do his job and listen to that horse shit.
Look, you want to get in a domestic relations situation, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, at the end of the day, it obviously spiraled out of control and people's tempers were running high after that city council meeting. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail in the future, my friend.
Well, like I said, again, I want to emphasize to Miss Laster, y'all brought this fight to me. After I spoke, it would have been done. I would have never had nothing else to say. I accomplished making sure that the wilted rose didn't get put on the board. I wasn't expecting Carr no more than I was anybody else. I was hoping for Bob Sutter. I still hope for Bob Sutton, and I have limited knowledge of the man, but I got enough to know that he's better than anything else we have on that board.
Well, and hey, you made that abundantly clear from the beginning. Since we started talking about what was going to happen here, you made it clear that you felt Nelson was not good enough to represent, and you've provided plenty of evidence for that. It's unfortunate about Mr. Sutter, but that's the other thing is when you have a situation where you're replacing someone and you let the sort of city council decide who the replacement's going to be. Unfortunately, it'd be better if the voters were able to do it themselves.
And that's on Tommy Doyle. And again, like I told you before, we need somebody to run against Tommy Doyle. We've got to clean that house too, because I don't trust Tommy Doyle I don't trust Tommy Doyle at all.
I can't speak to Tommy Doyle's credentials. I just know the interactions I've had with him, and I'll be honest, he's been fine with me. But you're not the first person to bring this up, Joe. A lot of other people have questioned our county election commissioners up and down the counties from Charlotte all the way to Collier.
Well, and here's my real issue. Say the governor does step in and remove this entire board, which I have under good authority that may happen. And if that does happen, I don't want it to be appointed candidates from Terry Miller or from Dane Eagle or no one else. I want the people to have a say in who's on that board, and I want a truthful say. Let them know what the people really stand for. I put the letter in there if anybody wants to go back and stop. I put the letter where she was promoting the lockdown mandates and all those things that conservatives against. And she hasn't been a Republican for but a few years, and she's already a rhino, and she ain't even been a Republican for but a couple years.
Oh, yes. Usually being a rhino usually takes many years to actually account. Look, I think it's just important that people know, because you know how it is, particularly in Lee County. People say I'm a Republican. Well, you got to put that to the test, because I think a lot of people in Lee County are registered as Republicans, but I don't always know if they actually are. And, I think the lockdown situation was a great way to test that.
Yeah. And again, look, I don't really care. Whatever you are, if you're a conservative, I'm a conservative. And I prefer conservative values. If you are a Democrat or you're a non-party affiliated person who actually does the right thing, I'm not going to go against you. But when you start poking into things where it's costing the taxpayers, it's hurting the citizens of Florida, I promise you, I'm going to have something to say about it. And nobody's going to stop me. Nobody's going to bully me to shut up. Nobody's going to make idle threats that's going to scare me. And again, they brought this fight to me on this one. All I spoke up was against a political candidate, which everybody does. Everybody has their opinions, and I use facts. I don't use opinions. I use facts.
Well, at least you didn't create lies out of whole cloth like Terry Miller. Is that what you're saying?
But again, I wish them the best. I hope they have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and all that. But I can tell you, the best thing they can do is crawl in the rabbit hole and leave the bull alone, because I won't back down.
Oh, I know you won't. That's the one thing I respect about you. You are very dedicated when it comes to this, to making sure, people, there's been transparency and people understand about the corruption in Southwest Florida when it comes to our public officials.
Well, Ford, I appreciate you joining me. And this is, we probably won't do a show probably again till after the first of the year. I'm sure you got plans. I'll be putting some content out. But I want to thank Ford. I want to wish you and your better half and your mom and everybody a Merry Christmas. I know you got a plane to catch. Ford, as always, my friend, it's a pleasure talking to you, and I can't wait till we can talk again soon.
You got it. Merry Christmas, my friend, and I hope we have a happy new year, and 2024 is a much better year than 2023.
Well, as long as we get rid of these rhinos.
I hear you, my friend.
All right, brother. Take care. Love, peace, and gator grease. I'm Smokin Joe. I was joined by Ford O'Connell, and I want to wish everybody the happiest holidays. Merry Christmas. God bless you all, and God bless Florida. Love, peace, and gator grease. We'll see you soon.